Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Nick Cosgrove and I'm back with this week's No Filter Q&A. This is the episode where I answer all questions related to diet, training, and supplementation that I've received over the last 7 days from our in-house clients, online clients, as well as a few of our online followers. Remember, if you have any questions related to your nutritional plan, workout program, supplements you are currently taking, not taking, or considering taking, please feel free to email me those questions at nick@foreverfitperformance.com, or you can DM me your questions on my Instagram at fitcosgrove_. All right, let's get started with this week's no filter Q&A with question number one. Nick, how do you know if you're lifting heavy enough to make progress? It's not about how heavy you lift. If you want to create results with your physique, as in you want to build that solid, lean, dense muscle look, right? You want to sculpt your muscle bellies. You have to first focus foremost on execution of form, okay? 100%. Form is everything, okay? After that, you have to make sure you are focusing on both the eccentric and the concentric movements. After that, you have to make sure that you're creating a strong mind to muscle connection. There's so many times I see people in the gym going far too heavy on exercises and they're using ballistic form, as in they're bouncing back and forth, they're using momentum, they're using synergist muscle groups more than the primary muscle groups. So they're not engaging the proper muscle bellies correctly. And usually those are the people that either A, get injured, or B, don't see results, and then they get discouraged and then they stop altogether. Okay. So I've never been one of those people that says you have to keep increasing your weights, you have to keep lifting as heavy as possible. And you know, in my personal opinion on this is every day is different. Every day is different in the gym. So what I mean by that is you might walk into the gym on a Monday and train your chest, but the following Monday, you might walk into that same gym, do the same chest workout, and you might not be nearly as strong. And it could be for multiple reasons. Maybe you didn't eat enough, maybe you didn't sleep enough, maybe you didn't drink enough water, okay? Or could be no rhyme or reason at all. And that's happened to me before plenty of times. I've got a great sleep, I'm hydrated, I'm well fed, and yet I'm weaker today, right? So it's never going to be an exact science and it's not black and white. So every time I go into the gym, whether I'm working with a client or whether I'm working with myself, I always try to strive through the person I'm working with and even to myself. The most important thing here is that we can create that mind to muscle connection and that we can stimulate and not annihilate the muscle bellies. All right. So it's not about the amount of weight you lift. Okay. It's controlling the weight with good form, good technique, proper execution, and making sure we're focusing on both the eccentric and concentric contractions of the exercise. Okay. So to answer that question, it's not about super heavy weight. It's about doing a weight that you can control for ideally 10 to 15 reps. Because as I've talked about numerous times in the past, if you're trying to build for hypertrophy, as in sculpting the body, double digits work best. So you want to pick a weight that you can do between 10 to 15 reps. I'm not a firm believer in going to failure on every set, maybe the last set of an exercise, but not every single set. I'm a huge advocate of incorporating lots of drop sets, triple drop sets, circuit training, supersets, rest pause sets. So there's all these different types of techniques that go beyond just let's just keep adding more weight to the bar. Okay. Because you're going to hit a time where you can't keep adding weight to the bar, or you can't keep increasing the dumbbells. It does happen. And then you have to be strategic and say, okay, well, how can I make those 80-pound dumbbells feel like 200-pound dumbbells? Right? Your muscles don't have eyes. They don't know how much weight you're lifting. So as long as you're being challenged, okay, you can stay in that 10 to 15 rep range, you're going to grow 100%. So if 5-pound dumbbells are challenging for you, guess what? You're going to grow. Okay, so just remember that it's not about how much weight you're lifting. It's about your proper form, your execution, your technique, and focusing on the eccentric and concentric contractions along with creating that strong mind to muscle connection. All right. Okay. Nick, how many rest days should the average person take per week and why? So this will depend on the individual, okay? Their fitness level, their lifestyle, right? Their goals. Some people don't want to look like a bodybuilder. Some people just want to train for overall health and wellness. And for those people, I say, if you're in the gym 3, 4 times a week, that's great. That's all you need. But for people who want to, take their physique to the next level and they really want to see some definition, they really want to see, some lats and they want to see biceps and they want to see delts, My recommendation, a minimum 4 to 5 times a week in the gym. Okay. So I feel that's necessary because if you're going to, and I use the analogy again of building a business, if you're going to build a business, you can't do it doing it 2, 3 days a week. You got to be on that every single day. So the same thing with your physique. You do have to be on it every single day. Do you have to be in the gym every day? No, but you have to be on your diet. The diet doesn't leave. Okay. So if you're truly dedicated to building a better physique, you want to have low body fat levels and you want to build muscle, you have to be consistent. There's no way around that. So in my opinion, it's, 4 to 5, maybe 6 days a week if you can in the gym, training with weights, making sure your diet is dialed in every day, all day, every day. That's so important. Making sure you're getting your cardiovascular activity in. It doesn't have to be on a treadmill. It could be walking outside, whatever it may be, just making sure that you're moving, get your steps in every day. So you're keeping the body fat low. You're also working your heart, good heart health for your cardiovascular respiratory system. Okay, that's important. But it's not a, well, you need to take 3 days off, or you need to take one day off, or no. You need to listen to your body. Um, for myself, I personally don't take any days off. And a lot of people would say, well, that's overtraining, but I don't feel overtrained. I sleep great. I recover great. I'm progressing great in the gym. Still at my age at 40, I'm still progressing in the gym. So I feel good. I came back from my hernia surgery, first day back in the gym, July 6th. That was my first day training. I haven't taken a day off since. Every single day I've trained a muscle group. Keep in mind, my workouts are no longer than 45 minutes, and that's max. Okay, so I'm not in the gym for 2, 3 hours training. I'm in the gym for 45 minutes, usually in between sessions, or if I have a cancellation, or if I go to the gym early before my day starts, or at the end of the day, but I squeeze in a 45-minute session, and that's it. I focus on one muscle group, so whether it's chest, whether it's back, whether it's arms, whether it's delts, whether it's legs, and I just nail that for 45 minutes straight, and I get out of the gym. Okay. I make sure I rest properly, as in I get about at least 6 hours of sleep. I'm making sure that I'm hydrated properly. So I'm, in my case, at 210 pounds, I'm getting at least 4 to 6 liters of water per day. So I'm hydrated, and I'm making sure that my diet is dialed in. And honestly, I don't feel I need days off, but you have to listen to your body. So unfortunately, I can't answer that question and say, well, you need to take this many days off because that's the rule of thumb, because that's generic bullshit. And I don't do the generic bullshit. Okay. I don't fall victim to that formula. Listen to your body. If you feel you need more days off, take it. If you feel like you don't take it. Okay. You have to decide that. Okay. Nick, how important is exercise variety versus sticking with the same routine? You know, when I first started training clients, I was all about, I have to keep things fresh. I have to keep things interesting. I have to keep things fun. And I'm like, no, you don't. You have to make sure that you're doing the best to your ability as a coach to ensure that your clients are getting results. And that's not always fun. And that's not always fancy. And the workouts don't always look sexy. Okay. Sometimes they're very repetitive, but they work. Okay. And I'm all about what works. I'm not about entertaining people. Okay. I'm not going to do some backwards handstand push up or some fancy deadlift on one foot. None of that stuff. Because to me, those are circus acts and they don't create results. They're like the TikTok videos, right? They're clickbait. And to me, I'm like, no. I want to cut through all the bullshit. I want to do the exercises that I know work. Now, of course, you have to make changes and revisions to people's plans based on the individual. Not everyone's going to respond well to a barbell back squat. Not everyone's going to respond well to a incline dumbbell bench press. So you have to make tweaks and revisions along the way based on the individual you're working with, based on their genetics, based on their physical limitations, potential injuries, and gender. Okay, so, but once you find a formula that works, I don't really fall too far off that path. I stay with it. Once it stops working, that's when I make changes. I do the same thing with people's diets. You ask anyone who works with me on their diet, I make revisions on a weekly basis, but I don't do it for fun. I don't just say, okay, now we're going to mix it up and we're going to do this. Every revision or every change I make to someone's diet or training program, there is a reason for it. If it's their diet, maybe they didn't lose enough weight this week, or maybe they lost too much weight this week, or maybe they're not sleeping well, or maybe they have no energy, or maybe their strength is down in the gym, maybe their strength is up in the gym. So I make changes based on the check-ins they give me. And the same thing with the training program. I have a client recently tell me that, he strained his hamstring. Well, I do his training program for him. He lives in Japan. So I said, well, We're going to stay away from hamstrings for a week. We're going to give your hamstrings a break, but I'm going to give you a little bit more quadriceps. Right? I'm going to give you a little bit more glutes. So we're going to work around the hamstring. We're not just going to say no more legs because we're still going to work the hamstring indirectly. We're just going to stay away from maybe seated hamstring curls and lying hamstring curls and straight leg deadlifts. Okay. Give the hamstrings a week or two break. So that's when I make changes to people's programs when something's not working or maybe something's bothering someone. Because I said not every exercise is for every person. Okay. And that's where it comes down to working with an experienced coach that can guide you and say, even though barbell squats are the king of all exercises, they might not work really well for you because you're a 6'5" guy or 6'4" girl, whatever you may be, and you're really tall. So why don't we try you on the leg press or why don't we try you on the hack squats? Because I feel like that might work better for you. We can still do barbell back squats, but let's not make it a primary exercise. Let's make it like a secondary exercise. That's where you make the revisions. So I'm not one of those trainers that's like, okay, I'm going to change it up every week just to keep things fresh and interesting because that's not my philosophy. My philosophy is getting people results. So if people are looking for a fun workout, I'm not the trainer because my workouts aren't fun. My workouts are hard, they're demanding. I make people work, but people keep coming back because they see the results they get. They feel the results they get. And that's why I have a roster that 50% of them, people on my roster have been with me for 20 years now. Okay, because they see and they feel the results. Okay, so it's not about constantly switching things up for the sake of switching things up. You switch things up when they stop working, period. If it's working, don't change it. Okay. Nick, does the order of exercises in a workout actually matter? For the most part, yes, it does. Okay, and let me tell you why. I had another. This is a perfect question because I had another client this week who mixed up the sequence of the exercises that I gave him, and now he's dealing with another injury. This is another client, and I said, there's a reason I put things in a certain sequence. Yes, sometimes I understand if you're in a commercial gym, the piece of equipment's in use, and you have to, okay, I'll have to go do something else. I get it, but you don't want to be, for example, let's say you're doing, I don't know, a chest workout. My recommendation, you don't want to start a chest workout with dumbbell flies or cable flies or even a pec deck machine. Okay. You don't want to work pec minor before pec major. Why? Pec minor is a smaller muscle group. Pec major is the bigger muscle group of the chest. You always want to work the bigger muscle group before the smaller muscle group. Even though it's the same muscle group, you have to remember there's different heads, there's different muscle bellies in that muscle group. So the workout has to make sense. It's like following a recipe, okay? It has to make sense. So whenever I put someone's program together, ideally I try to get them to follow the order of the exercises I have it in. And like I said, I understand that sometimes you have to change things up if you're in a commercial gym and let's say your first exercise is barbell squats and there's five people in five different squat racks all on their phones. I get it. You don't want to wait for a rack. You might want to warm up with maybe some lunges. Okay. I'm okay with that. But what I don't want someone doing is, oh, well, the barbell squats are in use, or the barbell squat rack is in use, so I'm going to go do hack squats first. I wouldn't recommend that. Okay, because again, you're working the same range of motion using a machine before a free weight. Use the machine after the free weight. Work your stabilizers first. Warm your joints up. Warm your ligaments up. Okay. And also, you're going to fatigue your stabilizers first, which is a good thing because then you're going to transition to machine secondary. Okay. So that also comes though with years and years of training and just exercise knowledge, right? So I don't expect everyone to know that. But in my opinion, if you just start mixing things up for the sake of mixing things up, you're asking for an injury. Okay. And that's what happened to my client who decided to do, what was the exercise he was doing? I think he was doing, he was actually doing back day. And he decided that it would be smart to just go right into T-bar rows from the very beginning. For those that don't know, T-bar row is a bent over exercise with a fairly, heavy weight as you go. I don't like to start people with their back workouts with bent over work. I like to start with cable work first and then transition to free weights as we go because I find the cables help warm up the spinal erectors, the lumbar region, and the lats overall when you're working the upper back. Okay. So that's what I like to do with people, and it's a good way to avoid injury. Okay. So I had T-bar rows towards the end of his workout. He decided to put it at the beginning of his workout. Not a big deal, just slight problem in the lower back, but nothing crazy. But we're going to take a break from doing any, T-bar rows for the time being, bent over barbell rows, anything that requires you to bend over, and then you make revisions to the plan accordingly. Okay. So yes, I would recommend following certain sequences in the gym, but that's up to you. But in my experience, if you just start mixing things up or training on a whim, you're asking for problems. All right. Okay. Uh, Nick, how can someone tell if their soreness is normal or a sign of injury? Yeah, good question. All right, so one of the things I ask new clients all the time, the day after they train with me, I always send out an email. Are you experiencing any unusual pain or soreness? And I explain what I mean by that. So, unusual pain or soreness would be, oh my God, I can't move. My lower back is so sore. I can't even bend over to put my socks on. Okay. Or it hurts to get out of bed. That's not good pain. Okay. But good pain is, let's say, after a leg day, you go to sit down and you're like, oh, I can feel my quadriceps and my hamstrings and my glutes, my muscles. It's hard to go down. It's not easy. It's sore. That's a good soreness because that soreness is in the muscle bellies. Bad soreness is in the joints. So bad soreness would be, oh, I just did leg day and my knees hurt. That's not good. Or my hips hurt. That's not good. Or my lower back hurts. That's terrible. Okay. So if that happens, you need to reassess the workout that you did, talk to your coach, and troubleshoot. Because that's happened with me before. And it's not because I'm not watching the client's form. It's just like, okay, maybe we're not quite ready for that exercise yet. Let's readjust and we'll go back to that exercise in a few weeks' time. Because usually I can pinpoint what we did in the workout that may have caused the problem. Okay. So that does happen. But nine times out of 10, when I work with people, because I always, every single person I work with, my eyes never leave any set that they do. I'm never turn my back to anyone because I want to make sure that they're doing proper form and technique. If form starts to go or technique starts to go, I correct them immediately or we decrease the weight. Okay, 100%. So I don't really deal with people who get injured in the gym. Most injuries I see are actually outside the gym. Okay. But for those people who have every once in a while gotten some type of injury in the gym, whether it's in the elbow or rotator cuff, it's not necessarily because they did something wrong. Sometimes it's just the way it is. They have a physical limitation. Maybe someone has dislocated their shoulder a few times in the past. They did a heavy shoulder workout and now their shoulder is really sore. And it's like, okay, well, there's obviously some slight tear in your rotator cuff that's causing that issue. So next workout, we're going to warm up with lighter weight. Maybe we'll take two ibuprofen before you work out so we can decrease inflammation. I can go with that workout for the next 2, 3 weeks. Now you don't have any pain after that workout. Perfect. Now let's start adjusting the weight again, revise the program, and move on. Okay. So the best way to distinguish between good pain versus bad pain, if you have pain in your joints, bad pain. If you have pain in your lower back, bad pain. If you have pain in your muscles, as in your chest, your upper back, your rhomboids, your scapula, your biceps, your triceps, your quadriceps, your hamstrings, good pain. Okay. That's good muscle pain. Listen to your body. If your muscles are still sore, don't go train the same muscle groups again. This is why I advise people to have a split training program. So if you train chest on Monday and by Wednesday your chest is still sore, you have to be an idiot to go in and do it again because then you do risk potentially tearing something. Okay. And you do not want to do that because if you tear something, you strain something, you break something, you're out of the gym for sometimes up to 6 months, depending on the muscle group that you've torn. Okay. I've seen it happen. Guys tear their biceps. Now they can't train. They got to wait for surgery. You don't want that to happen. Okay. So train intelligently, approach your workouts methodically, listen to your body, and don't train the same muscle group more than once a week. Okay. I promise you, you're asking for problems if you do that. All right. Nick, what's the best training split for someone who can only work out 3 days a week? Top of my head, if it was 3 days a week, I would throw in chest and back day one because you got agonist versus antagonist muscle groups there. Day two, I would throw in shoulders with biceps and triceps because again, you get the biceps and triceps, agonist versus antagonist. Throw in the shoulders on the cap heads because you're not really using your arms as, or I should say, you're not really using your biceps and triceps as much when you're doing shoulders except for maybe the shoulder presses, but lateral raises, rear delt raises, upright rows, they don't really involve biceps or triceps. So I kind of like combining shoulders with biceps and triceps on a 3 day plan. And the third day, I would do legs and abs. Do legs at the beginning and do some abs at the end, maybe some hanging leg raises or lion leg raises, or you could do some reverse crunches, bicycles, and then legs, I'd keep it like a quadricep, hamstring, maybe some calves. So you could do some barbell back squats, walking lunges, straight leg dumbbell deadlifts, and maybe some standing calf raises. That's a good leg workout. And then throw in, hanging leg raises and some reverse crunches. So that's the type of split I would do for a 3 day split. I mean, you can alter that if you like, but I find with clients that work with me 3 days a week in the gym, that's usually the split that I'll use with them and the split I recommend for a lot of my online clients who train 3 days a week, just for those reasons, because you are working agonist versus antagonist muscle groups, and that seems to be a very safe and effective way to train. Okay. Okay. Nick, how do you judge whether a fitness trend is legit or just hype? Um, if it's on TikTok, it's hype. If it's on Instagram, it's hype. Well, I shouldn't say that because there are some people who actually post legit exercises on social media, but I always look at the anatomy and the physiology. I always do on any exercise. I'm like, okay, what is this working? So when I'm watching someone do an exercise, I'm like, which muscle groups are they working? If I don't know, and I'm like, what the hell are they working here? I, I don't just say it's a bad exercise, but I'm somewhat confused. Like if I see someone doing like one of those upside down handstand push-ups, I'm like, what is that actually working? I mean, is it helping create more core stability, core strength? To me, it looks like it's such a limited range of motion that you're putting so much stress on your rotator cuffs that an exercise like that, you couldn't pay me to do. I wouldn't do it. Or when people do these Olympic lifts and they lift the bar up in the air and they drop it to the floor. Again, an exercise you couldn't pay me to do it because the risk of injury goes up significantly with exercises like that. So I stay far away from exercises that I deem unsafe, where I don't see controlled fashion. I see very ballistic repetitions. I see momentum. I don't see proper execution, like I talked about in the first question. I don't see proper form, technique, and most importantly, I don't see the proper muscle bellies engaging. So when I do a bent over barbell row with a client, I can see their lats moving. When I do a bench press with a client, I can see their chest moving. When I do a dumbbell curl with a client, I can see their biceps contracting. So I know that I'm working the muscle group that I'm trying to stimulate. Okay. So that's how I know what a good exercise is versus one that's just clickbait. So when I see people doing these ridiculous movements online, those chin ups that people do, those ballistic chin ups where they pull themselves up and they push themselves up and they're hanging and they're swinging, and honestly, they look like a monkey. You're not really, in my opinion, stimulating muscle fibers. They may look cool, they may look sexy, but what are you really doing? What are you actually contracting? Which muscle groups are you working? 9 times out of 10, I'm sure if you were to ask these people, they wouldn't be able to tell you. Like, well, it looks good and it's hard and I get a good sweat. I'm like, yeah, but what else is happening here? Like, are you putting a lot of stress on your joints? Are you putting a lot of stress on your tendons, on your ligaments? Okay, so that's why things like CrossFit are deemed dangerous for a lot of people because a lot of those exercises are ballistic and they are dangerous. So that's why I don't do exercises like CrossFit because honestly, I've been training now for 25 plus years myself and I've never had a serious injury. And I train hard. But I also make sure that I'm warmed up correctly. I'm also make sure that I cool down properly. But I also make sure that when I'm doing the exercises, I'm contracting the muscles that I'm trying to contract. So I know which muscles I'm working. And every single person I work with, when we do an exercise, I explain to them which muscles they're working. And if they're new to the gym, I'm going to tell them, you might not feel it in these muscles right away because everything we do is very foreign to you. So you don't have that strong mind to muscle connection yet, but it will come. The more that we do it, you will start to establish that mind to muscle connection. Some muscles are easier to establish that mind to muscle connection with, like the biceps, for example. Others are more difficult, like the lats. Okay. So it just takes time. But again, my recommendation, if you want to stay injury free, don't fall into the hype. Stick to what we know works. Stick to basic bodybuilding exercises and understand anatomy and physiology so you can understand which muscles you're working when you're doing certain exercises. Okay. Two more questions. Nick, what's a good rule of thumb for hydration during workouts? Yeah, another good question. So again, this is not a one size fits all answer because a lot of people will sit there and say, well, you should be drinking water throughout your workout. And I can tell you that there's a lot of people that I work with that when they drink water throughout their workout, they get very nauseous. Okay. So that doesn't work for everybody. And then there's other people that will tell you, well, you should drink a liter of water before you train. Again, not necessarily. There's a lot of people that do that and they start to get cramps. Okay. So what I typically tell clients is bring a bottle of water with you to the gym. If you need water, okay, sip on water. Don't chug water, sip on water. What I try to do is create habits of people. So after we finish, let's say we do a circuit of 4 stations. After that circuit of 4 stations, a quick swig of water, not a chug of water, just a quick swig of water. That helps keep the muscles hydrated and doesn't usually cause people any digestive issues or any nausea because they're just having a swig of water. Okay. And I do the same thing. And it's just something that's habit. And it's not because I'm dying of thirst. It's just because I'm trying to keep the muscle bellies hydrated. Because if your muscles are not hydrated, then you do risk potentially tearing something. Okay. So you want a dehydrated muscle is a scary muscle to work. Okay. What I call a dry muscle. If you're training a dry muscle, you do risk tearing it. Okay. So you want to make sure it's hydrated. Also, if you're not hydrated, you're going to feel weak in the gym because muscle is 80% water. So you're only doing yourself a disservice by not being hydrated. Okay. So if you're someone who works out at, let's say, 7 o'clock in the morning, obviously, I don't expect you to be chugging a liter of water before you work out. I wouldn't even recommend doing that. But I would recommend getting up in the morning and just having a little bit of water. It could be just like half a cup, so 4 ounces. Okay. That should be fine for most people and then bringing a bottle of water with you to the gym and just sipping on that. And honestly, that tends to work for most people. But it's just the same thing I talk about pre-workout and post-workout nutrition. It really depends on the individual. And I can tell you this from working with people for 20 plus years. The generic rules that you hear, they don't work. Because you're going to meet someone one day who's like, oh no, I can't eat before a workout. I feel like I'm going to throw up. And then you can meet someone else that'll say, well, no, I need to eat before a workout because if I don't, I feel faint, I feel dizzy. So I'm like, okay, well, you got to troubleshoot and you got to work with the person that you are actually trying to help and say, okay, well, I'm not going to force you to eat if it makes you nauseous. I'm not going to force you to drink if it makes you nauseous. But we're going to make sure that we're doing something in a systematic format and put ourselves in the best position so that you have the best possible workout, so that you can lift throughout your workout with good form, good technique, and your risk of injury goes down. Okay, so to answer that question, my recommendation is that you sip on water throughout your workout. And if you can, if you're someone who works out early in the morning, just at least 4 ounces before you train, and just throughout the day as well. Obviously, once you're done your workout. If you're someone who works out later on in the day, I would hope that you're drinking water throughout the day. I can't tell you an exact amount, but if you're say you work out at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I would hope by then you've consumed at least a liter of water. And by that, I don't mean consuming coffee, I mean actual water, just so that your muscles are hydrated because you've been moving all day. Okay, so you need to drink water. Water is good for us. Okay, so drink water, but don't chug on it, especially if it makes you nauseous throughout the workout. All right, last question. Nick, what's the easiest nutrition change most people can make today? Portion control. Portion control, and I'm going to add snacking to that. It's so easy to switch off both. Okay, or switch on portion control and switch off snacking. When it comes to portion control, I am a huge advocate of using a food scale. In fact, so much so that anyone who wants to work with me on a nutritional plan, I always tell them this won't work, as in our relationship, coach and client, if you don't use a food scale. Because I can't make revisions to your plan on a weekly basis if I don't know what you're doing. And what I mean by that is, yes, you might be using the foods that I've implemented into your plan, but I don't know what portion sizes you're using. So I don't know how many grams of carbs you're doing. I don't know how many grams of fat you're doing. I don't know how many protein you're consuming. Okay, so a food scale, in my opinion, is such an easy add-on to your diet. It takes nothing to when you're meal prepping, boom, throw on a scale, done. It honestly takes less than 10 seconds per meal. I do it all the time. Same thing when I do my oatmeal in the morning. I measure out a third of a cup. That's all I eat these days. Throw it in hot water, throw it in a microwave, done. Okay. So I know exactly how much I'm having. And honestly, I believe the body likes that because the body likes to have consistency. Okay. So, human beings, we crave consistency. We operate well on consistency. So if your diet is consistent, your portion sizes are consistent, you're going to get good results. You're going to feel good. And I talk about this, how I'm a firm believer as to why I don't rely on stimulants throughout the day, especially towards that mid-afternoon crash where a lot of people like, I need a cup of coffee or I need to have some sugar. I don't feel like that ever. And the people I work with don't feel like that ever because they're following a good diet plan and they're eating every 3, 4 hours and they're doing a good combination of complex carbohydrates, healthy fats, and lean proteins. So their insulin levels are not spiking, their blood sugar levels are not crashing, and therefore they're not craving stimulants. They're not craving sugar. They don't need it. Okay. And that's how you know you're putting together a good nutrition plan when all those three factors are combined. Okay. As in your proteins and your complex carbs and your healthy fats are in check. So that to me is a very easy change that people can make and go, it's so OCD. I'm like, listen, if you're out there and you're complaining about the way you look and you're like, can't lose fat and you're not practicing portion control, you only have yourself to blame because you have no data. You don't know what you're doing. Like, let's say, for example, I said, you know what, I want to lose 10 pounds. I know exactly how I'm going to do that because I could tell you exactly how many carbs, how much protein, how much fat I'm having every day. Okay. I know because I measure everything out. I'm no longer competing, but I still do this. I don't do it for the aesthetics. I do it for how I'm going to feel throughout the day. So I know I operate really well on about 400 grams of carbs. I know I operate really well. I sleep really well. I feel really well. My hormones are in check when I operate on about 100 grams of fat. And I know because my body right now is about 210 pounds, in order for me to maintain my muscle mass, I need to be consuming at least 300 grams of protein a day. So I know all that. But if I need to make changes and you know what, I want to get a little smaller now, I want to lose a little bit of body fat, then I'm going to tweak the diet. Doesn't mean I'm going to drop all three macronutrients. Maybe I'll reduce my carbohydrates to 300 grams. And maybe I'll increase my fats a little bit and maybe I'll decrease my proteins or rotate my proteins. So it really depends on what I'm trying to do. Okay. But because I have that data, it's very easy for me to like, oh, I just need to change this. Done. And that's what I did for every show I ever got ready for. And that's why I was able to actually get ready for shows in 3 or 4 weeks because I was already on the diet. I'm just like, well, now I need to lose 15 pounds. Oh, no problem. Okay, let's just drop the carbs by 100 grams a day. Oh, let's just add on another 30 minutes of cardio a day. Oh, done. Easy. Okay. So there was no guessing. And then the other thing I just want to say is with snacking, which kind of correlates with portion control, but I'm a firm believer that snacking causes problems because snacking is mindless. You have a bag of chips, you have a bag of nuts, you have a bag of cookies, right? And you're snacking. So unless you're snacking on like just vegetables, I really don't recommend anyone snack. Okay. If you want to snack on spinach and asparagus, go crazy. But most snacks, in my opinion, are not healthy. When I see the word healthy snack, I always roll my eyes because I'm like, 90% of snacks that I see are not healthy. Okay, they're not. They're either overly processed, they have too much sugar, they have too much carbs. And people say, well, it's only like maybe 10 grams of carbs per serving. I'm like, yeah, but you don't have that serving. You have like nine of those servings. So now you're having 90 grams of carbs. And I see it over and over again because it's just mindless snacking. So I don't advise people to snack. Okay. And like I said, that kind of correlates to portion control, but it's so important because these are easy things to take out from poor eating habits. Okay. The snacking is a little bit more difficult for people. I get it. But the food scale, that's easy to add in. Okay. And honestly, Amazon, 40 bucks. The best 40 bucks you're going to ever spend when it comes to your dietary nutritional plan. You're going to get the best ROI on that. I promise you. Anyway, that's it for this week's No Filter Q&A. This episode will be going up on Monday, December the 1st. As a reminder, if you have any questions related to your nutritional plan, workout program, supplements you are currently taking, not taking, or considering taking, please feel free to email me those questions at nick@foreverfitperformance.com, or you can DM me your questions on my Instagram at @fitcosgrove_. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for supporting my YouTube channel as well as my online coaching business here in Vancouver, British Columbia. I truly do appreciate all the support and all the feedback that I receive from each and every single one of you. Thank you all again, and I will see you all next week. Bye for now.